Thank you, Alex. So yeah, my name is Rob. I'm a senior account manager here on the agency team in Brighton. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a few simple steps on using Brandwatch and what it actually does for our clients. So I'll start sharing my screen. So first of all, the way that you start your journey on Brandwatch is by searching for what you want. So whether that be the traditional way of using Boolean via a query editor, which most social listening platforms use, or also by using what we call Brandwatch search, which is a more intuitive way of querying our entire data library. So essentially the entire public internet. What you can just do is type in your search term or keyword or number of keywords into essentially like a search bar. And that lets you just essentially query the entire data library without knowing Boolean. So if you have used social listening before, but haven't used Boolean, or you want to share social data with someone from the office who isn't really required to know things like Boolean, it's quite easy and simple to use a tool just to get everyone kind of more familiar with social data. And if you are more of a professional, or if you are an analyst, you can use our query editor, which we have put a lot of effort into reiterating the past year. So it's a lot more functional. It helps you find things easier. It's got a lot of good links and cheat sheets on how to write your queries properly, just so you can save time on getting things out there as soon as possible and then iterating on them once you really see the results of your work. Next step is segmentation. So in Brandwatch, there are two ways of segmenting data. One of them is keyword segmentation. The other one is what we call custom classifiers. So the first way of segmenting data is really quick and snappy. So you can essentially just type in a keyword. And what that does, it essentially starts looking for a query within your larger query. So if you want to analyze your data set by segmenting it in any particular way, so if you want to look at, for example, car models, if you're looking at an automotive client, and segment the data by share of voice for who is talking about which car model for that brand or for that client, it's quite easily done by just using keywords in the platform. And then custom classifiers lets you segment your data in a slightly more robust manner when you're looking for something a bit more ambiguous, like steps on the customer journey, for example. So what you see here in the background is essentially how that works. You drag and drop mentions and put them into a category. And what that does is it teaches the platform via machine learning to understand what you want to segment in your data set. This also lets you both ways, actually, let you customize things like sentiment, for example, if the sentiment that is, in Brandwatch on an NLP basis isn't enough for specific, dialects, for example, you have the tools in the platform to also segment it the way you want by just teaching the platform to do so. The third step is essentially analyzing the data. So all the things about Brandwatch that some of you might have heard is that there's many ways to customize what you're looking at. So where that comes into play is in Brandwatch dashboards. You are able to essentially create your own dashboards. The visualizations that you pick for each one of your dashboards can be customized for what you're looking at. And that gives you a lot of flexibility in visualizing the analysis itself, to compare specific things alongside each other, to cut and slice it the way you want by filtering it down how you want, and also using the segmentation that we spoke about previously. So that is something that is very, very powerful with Brandwatch, that it lets you essentially build your own type of dashboard and visualization the way you want to, and it's a really good way of visualizing your work, whether that be based on a specific language or specific geography, comparing things side by side on a competitive comparison benchmark. So you aren't really you aren't already blocked in by just using one search term in a dashboard. You can use multiple search terms, or if you want to think about it that way, if you are comparing your client to its competitors, you are able to visualize data from all of those queries or search terms in a dashboard like this to compare them side by side. And actioning the insights obviously is also quite important. So what we do with Brandwatch is let you report on what you analyze. Obviously, you are able to generate PDFs or presentations out of the dashboards themselves. You are also able to use our API to just use the data in any other tools that you'd want. For example, every small component in a dashboard can also be downloaded in a number of different formats. And other things like unlimited email alerts can also be quite helpful when you have more of a PR or crisis comms use case with us. And those let you set up alerts for things that are happening in your data set for yourselves on your team, or the clients to be alerted by specific changes, or if someone mentions a specific word or a specific keyword, number of keywords, they get alerted by that. And that's very powerful because yourselves or your clients can act on those signals or alerts from Brandwatch quite quickly. We also have a different tool called Visya, which I am not going to go into in this particular presentation. But what Visya lets you do is essentially plug in all of your data from Brandwatch and also other sources of data with an open API to then create reports that would be live reports that you can send to someone only once. And then obviously those reports, being live reports, would auto update themselves if the data changes in Brandwatch or in any other source, like let's say, Google Sheets or Excel or Salesforce. So yes, that's another way of reporting back on your data from Brandwatch. So just to talk about some of the features that have been introduced to Brandwatch after Brandwatch became one company with Crimson Hexagon, and over the last year after we've been iterating on the first version of Brandwatch Consumer Research. So our smart AI, which we already touched on, is one of the ways that you can classify your data with. So BrightView, what it used to be known with Crimson Hexagon and now called custom classifiers, is a very intuitive way of creating your own type of segmentation. It has a few things to follow when it comes to best practice, I would say. So for example, if you are creating categories here, like let's say steps on the consumer journey, and are then putting in specific mentions into those categories, there are some rules to be followed. So for example, every mention should be very specific to its own category. So if you have a mention that could fit into both, that is probably not a good mention to use. And the minimum for these categories to actually work correctly is 10 mentions. So you have to drag and drop 10 mentions into these categories. I would probably say 20 are a good benchmark. And then you can just let the platform do its work and analyze your entire data set based on the segmentation that you put in there. As mentioned, this could be something a bit more ambiguous than just using keywords that you would use for car models, for example. This could be used for the consumer journey. This could be used for sentiment, whatever you want, really. Next stop on the things that work in Brandwatch and have been introduced a few years ago is our smart AI analyst in the platform called Iris. So what Iris helps you do is look at the component talking about the volume of mentions, and then that particular component is analyzed by our internal AI analyst to tell you what a peak in a conversation is and why it's happening there. So the times before Iris, which I do remember, it's essentially you had to click into one of these peaks in conversation and then view all the mentions from all the different data sources to analyze and judge what the drivers in conversation are in that. Whereas now, if you just toggle iris in the platform, you'll be essentially given the answers so that you can focus on more interesting things in your analysis or acting on what you find in these drivers in conversation. But it's a very, very useful tool just to save you time on, on analyzing some of this data and giving you the right answers to act on very quickly. Our image analysis is also available if you would want to have that in your package. If you talk to us and tell us that images are important, we can also essentially give you that in your package. And that includes looking at logos and objects. So you are able to look either for your client's logos or also analyze the images that are already in the data set that you are searching for, whether that be about your client or something else. So it's very, very useful because specifically with logos, some people, if they post about a specific brand, they would share an image with that brand in it, for example, the logo of that brand in it, but they wouldn't use the hashtag or the name of that brand. And there is quite a significant percentage of mentions that gets lost without logos, being tracked and just looking at text mentions. And the objects can be analyzed from a perspective of co-occurrences and themes that you look at within the images. So for example, you'd be able to tell if one of your clients is a beverage company, where are the beverages mostly being consumed, whether it's on the beach or somewhere in the street or in a restaurant or something like that. So it gives you more context to what's happening around the image and what common themes are within the images that people are sharing about the brand. Sentiment and emotion, this is obviously quite important. Most clients usually ask for, sentiment. That is usually a common denominator for any analysis done by an agency for a brand. So as mentioned previously, our sentiment is based on NLP. We also have emotions, which I believe, is a more interesting way of looking at people's behaviors and the context of how they talk about specific things online. So emotions, just give you a bit more metrics than just 0 and 1 with positive and negative sentiment, obviously. So you are able to track what they're actually talking about and what emotion is attached to their mention, and whether that's something that you should maybe, look at, or the client should maybe look at. Topics and themes are extremely important because they help you break down the conversation into what is happening around your search. So this is very important for things like, content creation, looking at, what else people are interested in around your client or around a specific product, or it's really, the uses for things like this are extremely high and multiple. So what you can do with these types of visualizations in Brandwatch is break them down by looking at keywords, phrases, names, locations, organizations, hashtags, and emojis. That is as a default in the platform, so you can view all of those things in the visualizations from the get-go. But if you want to, for example, just look at the emojis that people are associating with the brand that you are working with, you can also quite quickly customize one of these visualizations to fit that particular purpose. And then if you want to, you can create another visualization side by side with this one that'd be looking at the emojis associated with your client's competitor, just to see, the correlation or differences between them. That is also, as mentioned before, one of the ways that you can create your own types of visualizations in our dashboards, and the flexibility of using them is endless, really. Social panels are quite important for us, as they help you find the correlations between the search that you're doing. Looking at, our entire data library on social, and then comparing that with a group of people that you can define yourself. So if you want to, for example, define an audience of people on Twitter and Tumblr that is your client's competitors, and then see the correlation of what they're saying in regards to your client, you can quite easily do that in Brandwatch right now. And we have also created predefined social panels based on age, for example. So if you're looking at Gen Z, Gen X, you can quite quickly just enable a social panel on your search, on your dashboard, to see the correlation between all of your data and a specific group of people. Affinities are another way of looking at that type of data. They help you essentially figure out what people in your data set are most interested in. And all of these things are based on a very specific interest, very specific to your particular group of people, or a specific group of people talking about specific things associated with the brand that you're looking at. So every group of people will have interests that are different and very much just looking at that particular group of people. So what I'm trying to say is that these aren't predefined by us. So the interest will always be different. And that is something that can be, compared to another client or another competitor, or just tracked against the mean on Twitter, for example, to see how, how essentially unique the group of people that you are looking at is, or the group of people associated with your search within your dashboard. These interests change over time, and as they change, you can analyze that change as well, and that will be reflected in one of these components in your dashboard. Reporting, already touched on that slightly, but there are a few ways of reporting in Brandwatch. So one of them is you just essentially download the entire dashboard. If you want to, you can share dashboards. There are different types of reports that you can generate from your dashboards, and also just things like quick snapshot reports that you can send to someone and also generate from within the platform. Another thing that I mentioned previously is also being able to, for example, look at one of these components and just download a component like this. You might not be able to see it here, but there's always an export button on any component or visualization in your dashboard that you can download into multiple different formats and send on to someone or put into your own reports. So that is essentially just a quick introduction to what Brandwatch does and how it can help you and help your clients reach that higher goal when it comes to social, and looking at data from a very specific viewpoint of influencing or driving decision making. I'm just going to look at a quick case study now. So just an abbreviation of what the use case is. It can be found on our website as well if you'd be interested in this particular case study. But just to give you an idea of how Brandwatch's data can be applied to, for example, entering a new market. So this agency, Thinkers, was helping a brand that makes water filtration products. And what they did is they tried to analyze data based on geolocation in Brandwatch to find out where are problems with water the most apparent in Spain, in which region of Spain. So they analyzed those locations, analyzed mentions from a whole year. So they had a pretty big data set, had a look at, people mentioning water, and then also analyzed what type of problems associated with water those were. Looking mostly at negative mentions, talking about the taste of water. And after analyzing all of that data and, having reported on where all of that data is coming from, they then created a campaign by engaging with a pretty well-known Spanish cook and TV host to create a campaign where he would be, visiting those particular regions cooking and using water that was filtrated by the products of this particular company. The results of that were pretty good because the company saw a 30% annual increase in filter sales, and also things like brand recognition, brand mention was shifted from a previous campaign that they did around the Formula One to the hashtag associated with this particular campaign and with their own brand, so their own products, and that is a pretty good result for quite a simple use case, but a very important one when entering a new market or just trying to identify a specific problem geographically in a country or in a region or on a continent. So that was a quick use case on how Brandwatch can be used. I would urge you to go on brandwatch.com and have a look at the entire case study. You can read about it a bit more and other case studies related to use of Brandwatch or use of our data on our websites. So thank you very much. Take care.